Okay. Remember when we talked about Missouri and Kansas kind of being like part of the reason the whole Civil War started? You know, the whole bleeding Kansas bit? Yeah. And we're like, oh wow, the two states that, or state and territory at the time, but the people that you never really think about starting a war are the ones that kind of started a war. You know, as a student once put it, thanks John Brown, you grandfather-ish butcher who made human sushi. Yeah. Anyways, so we already knew that there was this epic issue between Kansas and Missouri, and it all revolved around slavery. It was determining whether or not Kansas coming into the Union, into the country, was going to be a slave state or a free state, right? And the people of Kansas want to be a free state. The people of Missouri are like, yeet, nope, we're going to flood over. We're going to try and make it a slave state, right? There's clash, there's blood, there's chopping, like it's a mess. Okay, so that's one of the big ingredients to really kick off the Civil War. However, it's not the only one. So really, the big umbrella thought leading into the Civil War is slavery. Do we own slaves? Is that a thing in the United States, or do we not? Are we a free nation? That's the big umbrella issue at the time. Now, Missouri is going to add a little more fuel to the fire, actually a lot more fuel to the fire, in a Supreme Court case that takes place. This is considered a landmark case, meaning that it changes the American perception of society based on the ruling of the Supreme Court, so it's a big deal, in other words. The case is called Dred Scott versus Sanford. This happened in 1857, the ruling did. So here's some background on this. We have an individual, Dr. John Emerson, who is from St. Louis. He purchased a man by the name of Dred Scott. That's the dude, okay? Purchased a man by the name of Dred Scott as a slave when Dred Scott was 30 years old. All right, these are established facts. The end. Now remember, Missouri sat in this weird little thing where like it had slavery, but some communities didn't do slavery. It's kind of a weird spot. For all intents and purposes of this conversation, Missouri is a slave state. Okay, so here's the thing you need to know about Missouri being a slave state and when it comes down to slavery and freedom. Missouri had a statute or a law that said that if an enslaved person relocated to a free state, say like Wisconsin, for example, which is considered free, the Wisconsin Territory, if a person relocated for a duration of time in that area, they would be considered a free person. Once free, always free. All right, that was the concept, that it was the belief of the system involving slavery in Missouri. All right, so anyone who was held as a slave in Missouri but was able to leave into a free area, in most cases they were able to sue for their freedom, and it was granted to them up until the 1850s. All right, so that's something kind of unique about Missouri, and this impacts Dred Scott. Because Dred Scott winds up moving up into Wisconsin territory, which really is about modern-day Minnesota, with Dr. Emerson. They're there for about 18 months. Emerson allows him to get married, have a family. In fact, Emerson leaves for a while, and Dred Scott and his wife actually stay there for a prolonged period of time. Now, long story short, because this gets really crazy really fast, ends up happening is Emerson dies suddenly. Dr. Emerson's like, bye, right? Well, that means that Dred Scott and his wife, who still were under the ownership of Emerson because they never sued for their freedom at that point, because they're under Emerson, his wife takes over the estate, meaning she takes control of all the property, and she has, by definition, so she has control over the Scotts, right? Well, at that point, Dred Scott says, forget this, I'm going to sue for freedom, right? And so they take it up to the local courts. They take it up to St. Louis because Dr. Emerson's wife moves back to St. Louis, et cetera, et cetera. They take it up with the St. Louis court, and the St. Louis court, after 2 times around, decides, hey, you know what? The Scots are free. They're able to show that, hey, we lived in a free area, once free, always free. We apply that, therefore we should be free. So St. Louis says, they're free, the end. Well, Emerson's wife, remember Emerson's dead, Emerson's wife decides to take this up to the Missouri Supreme Court. All right, so now we've gone from St. Louis to Missouri Supreme Court, U.S. Supreme Court's up here. They're at the Missouri Supreme Court, and they start this bit in 1852. And at this point, also note in the United States, with the Compromise of 1850 and a few other things, slavery, the debate of it had become much, much more heated within the United States prior to this. So this ruling's taking place during a heated exchange already inside the national capital along these lines. So the third justice, there are three people in the Supreme Court, his name was Hamilton Gamble. He said in his dissent, so a dissent means I disagree with the majority of the opinion. You need to know what dissent means. He ends up saying, and I quote, "Times may have changed, public feeling may have changed, but principles have not and do not change. And my judgment there can be no safe basis for judicial decisions, but in those principles which are immutable." All right? So he says this saying that, hey, things have changed, but that doesn't mean the principle has changed. Once free, always free. Like, that hasn't changed, even though everything else has changed. So Emerson's wife, Irene Emerson, remarries to Dr. Chaffee. By the way, Chaffee County, Missouri. There you go. Anyways, so they move away from Missouri. John Sanford takes over ownership of the Scots during this whole thing. So the Scots and their lawyer end up going all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court, where they argue that the Scots have been free all along because of Missouri laws saying they lived in free territory, therefore they're free, let them have their freedom. So they sue for their freedom. The Supreme Court, at the same time, the U.S. Supreme Court, they're trying to figure out what on earth are we doing, remember, third branch of the government here, what are we doing to keep this nation together? So there is this large dissent and this large majority opinion that is created by the Supreme Court. Taney, Supreme Court Justice, has his own thoughts. It's a 2 hour, when he reads this thing, it's 2 hours long, which is crazy long for majority opinion. But when he reads it, he believes in 1857 that he's going to silence all the critics. He's going to say, this is it, this is the end, this is the rule, this is the law of the land, we have spoken, we've said our piece and waited 3 minutes, like, the end, all right? We're gonna end it right now. So the question is, how did the courts rule in the Dred Scott decision? Well, like I said, Dred Scott versus Sanford, the actual case, is another matchstick thrown into a dry timber ready to burst into flames, which should tell you exactly how the court rules. So majority of the court rules against Dred Scott. And the Supreme Court, the U.S. Supreme Court says as a majority, nah, you're not free. The end. And there's a big dissenting opinion about this as well, saying I disagree as a Chief Justice, like I believe something else, which is involved also. And what this really does is this really stirs up the abolitionists and really stirs up the North. Like, it infuriates the North. Because at this point, people are looking at the evidence and they're saying, Dred Scott should be free. Why are you doing this? Well, then the belief becomes, well, the Supreme Court is doing this because the Supreme Court is involved in the politics and is favoring the South. So now you've got another issue going on. You've got another branch of government, the Supreme Court, that's being accused, probably rightfully so, of being biased towards the people of the southern states, right? Well, that's an issue now also because now we have people in the North, the abolitionists and the anti-slavery movement, saying our own federal government doesn't want slavery to go away. How are we supposed to end this inhumane event that's taking place? So it just adds more fuel to the fire. And also what it does is it says, really, when the Supreme Court makes that ruling, it says the laws may say that someone can be free if they do this, that, and the other. But if their owner goes to court against them, probably going to rule in favor of the owner, which really creates a lot of hostility. So that's Dred Scott. Now, the other thing you need to know about this later is like part 1 of 2, is that because of this event, we find 2 individuals that are in a prominent political position that really kind of latch onto this case and really start to build the platform of who they are as politicians also. One of them is by the name of Stephen Douglas, who has his own opinion about how the courts rule here. And the other one is a man by the name of Abraham Lincoln. So this is where Lincoln really starts to step into the spotlight and really starts to set the foundation for a presidential run as well. And what's going to happen is Stephen Douglas, and Abraham Lincoln are going to have multiple debates on morals and ethics when it comes to slavery and the institution and the United States and society. And that's really going to set up the presidential race of 1860 between those two individuals. So there you go. Dred Scott, deemed free, sued for his freedom, took it to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court said no, infuriates the United States in the process. So there's your landmark case, Dred Scott versus Sanford from 1857. Just another piece to get us one step closer to the first shots fired in the Civil War.